Hello everybody and welcome to Planning Committee at Lichfield District Council on the 28th of October 2024. This is a publicly broadcasted meeting that is streamed live via our website and available on YouTube. I would therefore ask you to conduct yourselves in an appropriate manner. I welcome those present in the public seating area and ask you to be respectful to the committee members, its officers, as well as those speaking. I ask that you remain seated and quiet during these proceedings. My name is Councillor Rosie Harvey-Coggins and I'm Chair of Lichfield's Planning Committee. In a moment, I will ask everyone participating in this meeting to introduce themselves. Before doing so, can I remind everybody in the meeting to ensure that your mobile and electronic devices are switched off or muted through the session. For those who have registered to speak, please ensure that your content is relevant and material to the debate in hand and that you are mindful of the allotted speaking time. If you go over this time, you will be asked to stop speaking immediately. When speaking, please speak directly into the microphone so that those following from home, as well as those in the room, can see and hear you clearly. When you are not speaking, please ensure that your microphone is switched off. Planning Committee is a non-political, quasi-judicial committee bound by National Planning Policy Framework, Lichfield's local plan and supplementary planning guidance. Our decisions are informed by planning considerations tied to these policies, but it is not a pure science. We must weigh up benefit and harm when coming to a view. The arrangements for conducting this meeting will be as follows. Officers will introduce each application. Any members of the public or applicants or agents who have registered to speak will then be invited by me to address the committee in turn. And members are reminded to keep their questions to the point and on matters of clarification for planning issues only. Technical questions or clarification of details of the application will generally be best directed to officers. Committee members will then discuss and decide on the officers' recommendations on each application. May I also be clear that we cannot receive questions or comments from anyone in the public seating area. Please be assured that the committee will aim to thoroughly question and consider all matters before it in coming to a decision. When we come to vote on each application, I will initially ask all members to confirm whether they are minded to approve the recommendations in the report by raising their hand. I will then ask those of you voting against the recommendations or abstaining to confirm the specific planning reasons you are doing so. In the event of a vote being carried against the officer's recommendation, I will ask officers to comment on the validity of the planning reasons, and if recommended by officers, I will ask members to vote again on whether to defer that item for a further report on those reasons. If for any reasons a member is not present for the whole of any item, they will be asked not to vote on that application. I will now ask all members first and then officers participating to introduce themselves, please. So do you want to start with Councillor Cross, please?
All right, I'll do that again. Sorry about that. We'll get into it in a moment. Good evening, everybody. My name is Derek Cross. I'm the ward councillor for Fradley and Orawas.
Good evening. My name's Councillor Mears, ward councillor for Highfields.
Little Aston and Stonham.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Tom Marshall, and I'm the ward member, or at least one of the ward members, for Armitage with Handsacre. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Galvin. I'm the councillor for Summerfield and All Saints in Burnwood.
Andrew Rushton, Whittington and Street Hay.
Hello, Jane Anketer, ward councillor for St John's Ward, Lichfield.
Hugh Ashton, Stow Ward.
Thank you very much for that. Now can we move on to the officers, please, if we start at that end. Thank you.
Good evening, Mark Evans from Staffordshire County Council Highways.
Good evening, Ian Long, Principal Planning Consultant with the Council.
Patrick Daly, Senior Planning Officer at Lichfield.
Yes, good evening. Stuart Evans, the legal advisor.
And Kerry Challoner, Development Management Manager.
And Christine Lewis, the Elections and Democratic Manager and Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So we'll move on to any absences that we've got tonight. So we've got apologies from Councillor Sharon Taylor and Councillor David Salter. Anybody else got any other apologies? No. Okay, thank you. That's that. Declarations of interest. Has anybody got anything that they need to declare now? Councillor Anketel.
I'm ward councillor for St John's, and the planning application is concerned with something in my ward, but I'm not prejudged or anything.
Thank you. The same with me regarding declarations of interest. I'm a ward councillor for the ward where the planning application is tonight, but I'm not predetermined. Okay, next on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Can we declare them as true, or has anybody got anything you'd like to? Yeah, okay, everybody. Yeah, okay. So a proposer and a seconder that the minutes of the last meeting are a true record. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the planning application for tonight, which is 24/00137/REMM Land at Cricket Lane, Lichfield. So I'll move on to the officer to present now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Just as a quick introduction before I begin, as many of you haven't seen my face before, my name is Patrick Daly, a contractor here at Lichfield District Council since April this year, dealing mainly with major applications, including this application before you today at Cricket Lane since my arrival. Indeed, the application before you this evening is 24/00137/REMM for land at Cricket Lane. The application concerns a reserved matters application for 520 homes and associated infrastructure. Briefly, in terms of planning history, members may recall that outline consent 18/01217/OUT FLM was granted in November 2021, a planning committee subject to a number of conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement. Members will have seen the reserve matters application for the commercial aspect of the site to the south, 23/01438/REMM, that was approved at committee in July 2024. The application here today is dealing with the reserve matters only for the residential area, that is to say layout, scale, appearance and landscaping, with access already approved at outline stage. This is derived from 2 ingress and egress points on Cricket Lane. The slide before you illustrates the red line plan of the residential aspect of the scheme, with Cricket Lane to the west, London Road to the south, the A38 to the east, and the canal to the north. And here you are now in context with Google Maps. In terms of photos, here we have a number of photos taken at the site. Photo 1 is taken from London Road looking north. Photo 2 from Cricket Lane looking southeast. Photo 3 looks southwest along the hedgerow. Photos 4 and 5 look southeast across the site. And 6 and 7 look east. The site is mostly flat, save for a small hump in the middle, you'll see, which is to be smoothed. I'll be able to see it just around here. As part of the scheme, there are no other notable designations on the site, save for its allocation in for residential development in the local plan under South Lichfield Strategic Development Area. There's photo 7. Can I ask members and the public to turn to the supplementary report first, so that things can be cleared up from the off? you'll see that there is a list of plans in the report that replaces those on the committee report. This is to take account of the comments from SCC Highways, who required minor alterations to the layout relating to visibility, landscaping, vehicle and cycle parking, amongst other minor alterations. Indeed, we did receive a public comment before the supplementary report was published as to why further consultation was not undertaken in light of revisions, but this was deemed to be not necessary given the nature of the changes that were more technical and aesthetic rather than changing the essence of the scheme. Existing residential amenity of those living on Cricket Lane or around the site is not altered by the revised plans, and in such instances, further consultations often lead to consultation fatigue. Also on the supplementary report in terms of dwelling mix, which is detailed on page 4, the scheme will deliver 520 homes, with the lion's share being 2 and 3 bedrooms, which broadly aligns with planning policy. 182 of the units would be affordable, that's 35% of the total, split into 65% social rent and 35% shared ownership. Again, the majority of these would be 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings. Other notable parts of the scheme are the provision of 2 play areas and open space throughout the site, 2 under-12 football pitches, associated changing facilities and parking, 11 allotments and associated parking area to the north, new pedestrian connections to the wider area, such as Cricket Lane, London Road and the canal pathway to the north. Members may also remember the visual and acoustic mund that undulates between the residential and commercial sites to preserve visual and acoustic amenity. Financial contributions include, but are not limited to, £6 million towards primary and secondary education, 218,000 towards local healthcare, and 750,000 towards the start of a new bus service, amongst other financial contributions that were secured at outline stage in the Section 106 legal agreement. Note SIL payments are 462,000 from the 2016 SIL charging schedule. This will be higher given index linking in 2024. Note this is only applicable to the proposed market housing floor space, as affordable housing is not SIL liable. So in terms of now wanting to discuss the site layout that you have before you, this was the one that was originally submitted back in February this year. On review, there was a number of inadequacies, inaccuracies and issues highlighted with the scheme, including what officers considered a rigid and sterile layout with linear block housing, as well as parking, extensive hard standing, future amenity issues and place-based safety concerns, amongst others. In particular, can I point members and the public towards the following areas in the original submitted plan. The area to the south, I think works, there we go. Area to the south, we had issues here with parking and amenity in this area. The play space area to the south raised pedestrian and safety concerns with regards to positioning of the road, which is in this location here. Many houses had rear parking areas that compromised amenity and tranquility of those garden areas, and also undermined their long-term use given the distance from the front door. You'll see that in this area here and further up here. Flatted blocks had far too much hard standing and no amenity space. They were located here and further up here to the north. There was an absence of a pedestrian link onto Cricket Lane, as you'll see here. Landscaping was considered insufficient given the size of the site. See, it's relatively scantily landscaped in certain areas. And the general layout of the scheme was considered quite rigid, really. You'll see, as you note through, this is the boulevard area here. There's just a very kind of solid linear pattern here without much visual interest, really, which we considered to be not adequate. As a result, officers engaged with the applicant about the above issues, and following a series of meetings and engagements, they did respond. So can I ask members to try and keep in mind that first layout while I move to the revised layout? It's a slightly different scale, but it still illustrates the same thing. So with the revised layout, the issues of the parking and amenity areas to the south have been resolved. You'll see there's a slightly different layout designed here. The play space to the south has been improved in terms of pedestrian and child safety, as the adjacent road only leads to one dwelling, which is just here. The houses with rear parking areas that were considered to compromise amenity and tranquility of garden areas and undermine their long-term usefulness are gone, and in their place standard front drive parking. You'll see in these areas here and further up north. Flatted box have been removed, and those surplus units were pushed to the south of the site as part of a redesign. They were here, and those additional units have been placed in this area to the south. The pedestrian link to Cricket Lane has been incorporated, as well as another link to London Road. That's the one to Cricket Lane, and a further link here, London Road. Great level of landscaping throughout, especially on the main pedestrian route linking the northern play area to the playing pitches and drainage basin. You'll see that here. And the general layout of the scheme has been improved, more organic, to be seen as more organic, with insets, recessions, bookends and to the terraces, to make the site look like an incremental development rather than a purpose-built large-scale addition. So you'll see just small changes in the building line, probably most pronounced here along the boulevard. Makes it look far more organic and appealing. And parking has been rectified in a number of areas to correspond better with their host dwellings. Move on to character areas. In terms of detailed design, the applicant proposes 2 character areas as shown on this slide. The purple is the village character area and the green is the traditional character area. Members will note that the village area encases the traditional area. I won't spend too long on these, but this is just to give you a flavour of what the dwellings will look like. These are the traditional house types. As I say, I won't go into detail, but here are some examples. Members are pointed towards the darker framed windows, the roof tiling, that's mainly darker, and banding towards the bottom of the dwellings. Here's some further examples. And some more examples. Originally, the applicant was only coming with just a few house types for each area, but has since expanded that to include much more different housing. And then we move on to the village house types. Again, to members, note the addition of central banding in some of the dwellings in here. Chimneys on some dwellings, not all, but only on some. And lighter window frames, and generally lighter tiling as well. Here's some additional house types. And the last load. So in all, there isn't really a great deal of difference between both character areas. So in response, we have engaged with the applicant and we have devised a condition to request further materials that will aim to deliver different types of bricks of lighter and darker contrast, about 5 or 6 in total, we think, as well as a change in roof tiles and additional banding under the eaves of the dwellings for extra distinctiveness. Again, trying to get away from that rigid feel and make the development feel more organic rather than and developed over time rather than a large scale development. Here are some street scenes with different types of bricks in practice. So you'll see their difference in in tonality. I think it's probably best exemplifies here. You'll see different types of bricks as well used in this example. This is to be secured by condition. And a last load of street scenes. I think it's important at this stage to emphasise to members and the public that volume house builders can find it difficult to meet site-specific design issues, and they are because they are delivering at such scale. So Persimmon here are making significant changes in response to officer comments, and this should be commended. The application is recommended for approval, subject to members' views. Proposed conditions relate mainly to highways and detailed design and the removal of PD rights to convert garages and insert new windows noted in the committee and supplementary reports. Thank you.
Thank you for that thorough report. So now we'll move on to speakers. We have one speaker tonight, Olivia Morris, who is the applicant agent. If you'd like to approach the microphone and take a seat. Your time will start when you begin to speak. We'll start a timer and we'll give you a warning before that ends. Okay, yeah. So we've got a timer ready. Yeah. Okay, if you'd like to go. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for your time. My name is Olivia Morris and I'm a planner at Persimmon Homes, West Midlands. The Reserve Matters scheme before you provides a balanced housing mix in accordance with local plan policy H1, which is supported by the council's policy team. The scheme will deliver a policy compliant level of affordable housing, 35%, which equates to 182 units. The quantum of affordable housing and the tenure splits is supported by the council's housing officer and will deliver much needed housing for the district. A fundamental part of our scheme design has been to ensure that the development forms an integral part of the community for both existing and new residents. Pedestrian and cycle routes are integrated across the site, as well as providing linkages to the existing canal towpath, Cricket Lane and onto London Road. A comprehensive landscaping strategy ensures the ecological mitigation and enhancement of the site, and in turn results in a biodiversity net gain. The homes proposed conform with the approved Part L building regulations in terms of sustainable energy sources through the use of air source heat pumps as an alternative to gas. This results in more energy efficient, future-proofed homes for our residents. We've worked closely with officers regarding the design approach of this Reserve Matters application, which was established through the Council's approval of the Residential Master Plan and Design Code last year. This confirmed the key design principles to be implemented through the Reserve Matters, including 2 distinct character areas and the associated densities, materials palette and street hierarchy, as well as the locations of the public open space, the allotments and the sports pitches. Extensive conversations have taken place with officers regarding the house types that we are proposing to deliver, and we've worked collaboratively to develop a unique specification that's reflective of the local vernacular and character. Whilst materials is a matter to be dealt with by way of condition, we have agreed in principle a materials palette and the incorporation of additional features requested by the urban design and planning officers, which includes but isn't limited to specific brick types and roof tiles requested by the urban design officer, which are characterised by the existing urban form and edge of settlement location, a differentiation in brick detailing and eaves detailing between the 2 character areas, GRP chimneys to be incorporated on 10% of the plots, and we've worked with officers to devise a unique landscape strategy to reinforce each character area. All parties are satisfied that this will create a stronger sense of location and place, whilst adhering to the wider urban form and landscape context. Early engagement was undertaken with key stakeholders, including local ward councillors, the South Lichfield Alliance Group and Lichfield City Council. A public consultation leaflet drop was undertaken to around 500 local residents, and a consultation website was set up for comments to be submitted directly to us. This was a valuable opportunity to discuss our proposals and obtain feedback to be incorporated into the scheme. The scheme offers a number of significant community benefits that will be secured through the Section 106 agreement, including 35% on-site affordable housing provision, 2 leaps, 11 allotment plots, 2 under-12 football pitches, a sports pavilion and a bus route through the site, and the provision of 2 new bus stops. A total financial contribution of over £7 million will be secured towards enhancing the local bus service, the provision of public art, towards primary and secondary school education, and towards improvements to existing surgeries within the catchment area. The scheme also offers significant economic benefits, as new jobs and training opportunities will be created through the construction process, as well as increasing the number of residents in the locality, helping to support the vitality of the services and facilities. The Home Builder Federation estimates that the scheme will support the employment of approximately 1,800 local people, including opportunities for apprentices, graduates and trainees, will increase open space, community sport and leisure spending by just shy of £500,000, and will generate approximately £13 million in tax revenue, including £1 million in council tax revenue. So to conclude, the reserve matters before you today is supported by clear evidence to demonstrate the delivery of a sustainable place and community. We've worked closely with officers at both the district and county council in order to establish a scheme that not only achieves the council's vision for the site, but also a scheme that we as a business will be proud to deliver. I hope you appreciate the work that has gone into the proposal before you, and I respectfully request that members approve this application in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that. So before we go on to any questions or comments, I'd just like to remind everybody that this is on the agenda, given the request from members at Planning Committee in November 2021, and it is recommended for our approval and to delegate to the Director of Planning and Regeneration to approve the Reserved Matters application, subject to the conditions set out at the end of this report. Okay, so who would like to start with a question or comment? Okay, Councillor Joseph Powell first, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, actually, it looks pretty good, so happy with it. Just a quick question. The affordable housing is good to see, but how's it going to be spaced out? Is there going to be a set number of affordable houses between it? Are they going to be in their own little areas? If we just have some enlightenment on that, that'd be great. But apart from that, very good, like it.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Just to confirm, yeah, the affordable housing is effectively pepper dotted around the site. It's not, it is in, well, the applicant has determined that's part of the application where they are, and it is to the north, south, and effectively everywhere. It's not clustered in one area.
Okay, thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Thomas Marshall, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I too welcome a lot of the work that's gone into this by the developer and our officers as well. One of my particular bête noire, I have to say, is the GRP chimneys. I'm not a fan of plastic chimneys on top of roofs. I think they look a little bit, it's kind of, well, totally artificial, and I'm not quite sure what they're meant to achieve, but I understand it perhaps gives just a little bit of diversity to the roof lines. I know there were comments made by Sport England about the lack of parking provision for the pitches, I believe. If that could just be answered, I'd be very grateful. And also, I note that it's air source heat pumps, and I know that that is the current zeitgeist. I'm not a fan of them myself. I'm just wondering, first of all, obviously there will be 520 houses. Many of those, well, I would imagine most of them have got off-road parking. And the reason that I highlight that is because with the current trend towards EVs, if you haven't got off-road parking, then you're at a significant disadvantage in terms of having to use public charging points, which are much more expensive. So I think it's a major consideration that most of the people buying these houses will have somewhere to park their car. And should they wish to have an EV, they then have the opportunity to charge it at home, which I think is very important. My other question really is that I know that the transformer is being moved and upgraded, but again, with 520 houses, if they're all using an air source heat pump, and if many of those are using an EV, that's going to be putting enormous pressure on the grid. And I take it that obviously the national grid is fully aware of the implications. And are we happy that the grid will have the capacity to handle this extra consumption? again, that's really my comment or my question, but I do think that the work that's been done by Persimmon and Co. Is commendable. I do really like the variation of the designs and the village feel as well. I think is very important. And I think once it's completed, this development should be quite an asset to the city of Lichfield. And of course, will provide valuable homes for over 500 families. Thank you.
I will try and answer each of your questions in turn. I've written them all down. GPR chimneys. I mean, well, you can't really put real chimneys in anymore, I don't suspect, and you're not allowed to burn any smoking fuel. So, I mean, there's the option of having chimneys or not having them. We'd probably just prefer to have them to give that kind of enhance that village feel, but I understand your concerns. In terms of parking, for the sports pitches, we did discuss that as part of the application, but unfortunately that was all determined as part of the Section 106 agreement. So we're kind of hamstrung by that really. So it is the provision of just 20 spaces or so. But in reality, seeing as it is an under 12s pitch, it's likely that many of the players who would come along would be kind of all quite a few of them in the one car, so that probably eases pressure in that respect. EV parking, again discussed during the application. It's my understanding if most or if not all the homes would have an EV charging point, seeing as that we are moving towards that. I think it's 2030 is the date where the last combustion fuel engine will be produced, if I'm right. And then on the national grid point, they were consulted. There is actually an off-site substation which is adjacent to Cricket Lane and London Road. That's going to be moved on site and enhanced to take account of the additional pressure on the grid. So I think that answers all your questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker I've got is Councillor Galvin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo comments made by other councillors. I like the designs. It's a nice looking development for Lichfield. I was pleased to hear about the investment in public services such as health and education, because increased numbers to the area will need more services. But my concern is one for highways, really. I'm fortunate enough to commute to work into Birmingham, and I avoid Lichfield because of how bad the traffic is. With developments like this, are we going to see an increase in traffic, or what are we doing to try to avoid more traffic jams?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll pick that up from a highway perspective. Without wishing to dodge the question, all of that was considered at the outline application stage. So you're here tonight to discuss basically the internal design and layout of the housing site. But in terms of answering the question, which you can't obviously take into consideration because that's not what you're here to determine tonight, at the outline stage, traffic modelling was undertaken by the applicant and ourselves as the Highway Authority. There are numerous junctions that are going to be upgraded, signalised, and we also took significant amounts of money that Patrick, planning officer, has already mentioned in terms of the legal agreement. We secured £750,000 from Persimmon for a bus service that will go through this site, and the road has been designed to cater for that bus. We also secured significant walking and cycling infrastructure, and we, I think from memory, secured £917,000 for a bridge to go over the Lichfield and Hatherton Canal Restoration Trust's canal to carry on the cycling facilities, because this site doesn't have a school. So the nearest primary school will be on St John's, which is the Persimmon sister site off the Lichfield Southern Bypass. So we were very keen to make sure at the outline stage that there were sufficient walking and cycling facilities and crossing facilities to get any child on this site to the nearest primary school, which is in walking distance. In terms of our parameters at the county as Highway Authority and Education Authority, it is walkable. Hence, we secured crossing points, bridges, etc., for pedestrians and cyclists. So whilst it's not up for determination tonight, I hope that answer gives you some comfort that when we did look back in 2018 onwards, we did take a lot of time to consider the traffic impact, which we believed we mitigated at that point. And we took the sustainability of the site in terms of its location very seriously in terms of buses, walking and cycling. Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Councillor Mears, please.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm very impressed with the scheme as well. I like the variation of the housing, but I have to say that the village type housing does seem to be a lot more appealing than the plain brick houses. So I personally would like to see more of the housing with more variation, more of the white and park coloured buildings to be included if possible. Both Lichfield District Council and Sport England have highlighted that there's insufficient parking for the sports pitches. An under-12 football team has got 9 players, and very often they'll have 2 subs. So if you had 2 games played, that would be 44 children on the pitch. You'd need a minimum of 2 umpires, so then that takes you up to 46. You know, the parking at 20 cars will barely cover one team, one match being played by 2 teams. It's fundamentally not enough, because if that parking overflows onto the roads, you will end up blocking the roads for the residents outside, and then it'll become a point of contention between the residents every time there's a match on. So you're creating a point of conflict which could be avoided by simply providing some more parking. I feel passionately about that because there is a huge push towards all types of grassroots sports, or getting children involved in all sports. And it seems silly to make the provision for 2 pitches when the facilities aren't there to support the kids to actually play on those pitches. So that, and I think signage to get from Cricket Lane to the sports pitches. It's fine to have sports pitches, but not if no one knows where they are. So my other big concern is the mesh fence. There's been a mesh fence put up in Burntwood, which has created huge upset, because although it prevents the ball going over the hedge, every time a ball hits it, there's a huge sound. There's no acoustic dampening done for when the ball hits the mesh. So all the way around these pitches, that in this proposed development, there's a mesh fence most of the way around, and everybody facing those fences will constantly have the barrage of sound over a weekend, which is when you're more likely to have residents at home. So I think there needs to be an in-depth look at what type of fence is put up and what measures are put in place to prevent disturbance should a ball ever hit it. And that's without teenagers going in for a knock around after school. My other concern is the road width. I haven't seen anything to confirm how wide the roads are around the development, because in other developments in Lichfield, when there's on-road parking, there isn't enough room for a bin truck to get past to pick up the waste. So we have an opportunity here to avoid that and make sure that there is plenty of room for a bin truck, an ambulance, a fire engine. I mean, that's got to be a fundamental consideration, along with making sure there's room for a minimum of 2 cars to park off the road in front of our house, because you could potentially have a minimum of 2 adults going to work from there. They wouldn't be living on the outskirts of Lichfield if they wanted to walk into Lichfield town centre. There's a strong chance that many of the residents would be commuting further afield. So, and in regard to Lichfield and Halton Canals Trust, they've raised an issue that there are inaccuracies in the plans, and they have objections regarding the landscaping. I haven't seen that addressed anywhere, any details of what the inaccuracies are or how they're going to be addressed. So sorry for such a long list.
Okay, I'll try and answer as many as I can. I'll probably have to defer to Mark to some of those questions. Regarding the bricks and materiality and what the dwellings will look like. Obviously, you've seen the vast majority of the houses that will be developed. Condition 3 requires the applicant to discharge further materiality requests. And I'll probably just read out for members. It's probably easier. Notwithstanding the details of character areas that have been submitted with the application, a plan detailing the layout of the village and traditional character areas and supporting justification for their use and distinction, final house types for each character area, including confirmation materials and detailing, and materials palette as well is secured. So they would have to submit all the materials that would be used, so we can, at that point, then we can push towards using a greater of the white brick, isn't it? The white kind of rendered brick is what you're for more variation. Yeah, so that is conditioned, because we were very conscious of that throughout the application process, that there was a greater variety of units. On the parking pit for the pitches, again, I'll reiterate the point I said before. We're hamstrung, unfortunately, from the Section 106 legal agreement at the outline consent that only allowed for 20 spaces. We did highlight that in the application, but unfortunately, we're stuck with it. Unless, of course, Mark, if you want to explain anything else on under 12 pitches. Right.
Check there. If it can't be formal parking, can it be a kind of hard standing, like the hexagon grid that's got gravel in it, like an overflow area? Is there a halfway that can be compromised?
We may be able to do that with the applicant subsequent to this meeting. Yes, we could provide that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll just continue answering some questions after. Right. Yeah, I've got them written down. Signage, you raised signage issue. It's not really a planning matter that we can really cover, I'm afraid. So it always gets pushed and delegated over to highways as part of a separate process. Mark, you might be able to come in on that.
Right. I'll take some of those in random order to a degree. Right. Sports pitch parking. Without wishing to embarrass members, but I will, it's an awkward topic that we've had a discussion about many times. I did the outline application for this site that I've mentioned, which was a 2018 application. As members know, you have your own local plan, and this was a development site allocated in your local plan. You also have car parking standards in your local plan. There are no car parking standards for sports pitches in your local plan. So when I came to look at this many years ago, I was stuck before I even started. And in my 2018 report to officers and members, I stated that I used a neighbouring local planning authority standards, and they were Canex. And that was my benchmark, because I didn't have anything to go on from your district. So in my report, based on the outline, that was my benchmark to go off what Cannock Chase were using. And obviously, what I request and what I get sometimes is totally different things. Obviously, the planning officers have their own thoughts. And to cut a long story short, that was where we ended up with the outline application, which was secured at that point, that Ian, the planning officer, has already mentioned. But the problem is we hadn't got any standards to start with in your local plan. So it is an awkward one, obviously, when we are recommending an application. If we ended up in an appeal situation, which thankfully we didn't, but if we did, we would have had to have provided some evidence to an inspector as to why 20 were not acceptable. And given that we didn't have any standards to go off, we ended up where we did, using neighbouring authorities as a benchmark. So that's where the 20 is. And as I say, that was secured at the outline. In terms of road widths, how long have we got? Probably not too long, so I'll keep it short. In our formal reply that is on your website from the County Council, which is in the supplementary report, we received a plethora of revised drawings because we were not happy, as Ian, the planning officer, stated at the outset, with some of the designs. So we eventually got revised drawings out of the applicant. Now, there is a series of tiered levels of road. I don't know whether you can put the main plan back up here and you could use your pointer because you know where you are on the site. That'll do. Main boulevard, you can point to that because you know where it is. So the main boulevard links the two main access points off Cricket Lane, north and south. So that main boulevard is 6.7 meters wide, which is huge. And that is specifically designed at that width to cater for the bus, because that's where the bus will go in and out and do a little loop. And that's where the bus stops will be. And they are clearly located and signed on the drawings that the applicants submitted. So we have a 6.7 meter carriageway. Obviously, a bus is just shy of 3 meters wide, plenty of room for two buses to pass each other, etc., even if stationary at a bus stop. We also have 3 meter wide footways on the east side of Cricket Lane, where the existing grass virgin hedges are. So as part of the outline application, the opposite side to the residential houses at the moment, which is just grass verge with hedges, is going to have a 3 meter wide footway cycleway. And that's plumbed in to that boulevard all the way along. So cycling can permeate off Cricket Lane into the site, which is why that boulevard is so big to accommodate that. Once you come off that boulevard and you start permeating into the site, the vast majority of the roads then are 5.5 meters wide with 2 meter footways on either side. Now, 2 meter footways are national standards as stated in Manual for Streets. So that's spot on. 5.5 meters in our residential design guide that's on the County Council's website. So that's our go-to document for a developer. At 5.5 meters, that's absolutely fine for the quantum of development. And again, in national guidance, Manual for Streets, which we all have to refer to no matter what highway authority you are, at 5.5, 2 refuse vehicles can pass each other. It's given that width. A refuse vehicle is 2.55 meters wide, can't be any bigger due to legislation. So at 5.5, 2 refuse vehicles can pass. So obviously a refuse and a car can pass at 5.5. So from our point of view, that's more than adequate. Once you start then drilling down into smaller roads, the smallest road that the Highway Authority will be adopting is 4.8 meters. We do not adopt anything less than 4.8 as a Highway Authority. Anything less is private. So the lowest adoptable highway will be 4.8 meters, again with standard 2 meter footways. On some of the roads, there might be a footway on one side. That's nothing unusual when you're heading into a dead end. At 4.8 meters, again, national guidance Manual for Streets states a refuse lorry and a car can pass at 4.8. Just to take on your point of on-street parking, obviously all of the roads have been designed to our standards, meet our adoptable standards. Therefore, we have removed our initial objections. The roads in question have been tracked using a very large refuse vehicle. I'm an awkward what's it in terms of this. We always ask the developer to track something bigger than you actually have on your roads. I think Lichfield has a 10.9 Kerry, something like that. We've tracked something 11.9. So it's much bigger. Therefore, we have confidence that they can get around because your refuse vehicle is smaller than what has been tracked. So we don't have any issues with that from a tracking point of view and a design point of view. In terms of on-street parking, there's 2 things to say here. All of the off-street parking that has been provided by the developer for all of the housing plots meets your parking standards as listed in your local plan. Therefore, we haven't objected to that level of parking because it meets them. So Yes, you can have visitors, obviously parking on street, but as I've just explained, the road is wide enough technically by national guidance to allow a refuse vehicle to pass. The developer has also, I know Ian didn't show any of the designs, put some on-street laybys in the design as well, which are sporadically dotted around the housing site, which can be used for visitors. So I can't remember how many there are because I can't remember from counting them, but there are on-street laybys, which are off the main running lane. It's where a grass verge would be realistically, and some are in turning heads to prevent people parking in the turning head, which may then stop the refuse vehicle from doing a 3-point turn on bin day. So there's a lot of work gone into that design from where we started. So from a highway point of view, we have confidence that the design is fit for purpose. Hope that helps.
Does that answer your questions? Yeah, okay. Next question was from Councillor Evans, please. Sorry, just switch your mic on. I think it's off.
Keeps going off. Okay, much more attractive layout than we've previously seen on estates, so that is commendable. And I'm really delighted that we've got a better mix of affordable, and the fact that it's been spread throughout the development is really important. That it is not it's indistinguishable from the privately sold properties. It's important that we do that now rather than what's happened in the past. On page 7 of the supplementary, it talks about policy H1, and it's talking about the percentage breakdown of properties, and it says on there that it's considered to broadly align with the overall strategy of the local plan and is considered acceptable. I know that we're going into a new local plan, and that is not sorted as yet. But can you explain to me what broadly align means? Because a local plan is a local plan. So how can it be broadly aligned?
Yes, I can pick that up. The local plan will have a certain percentage of what it seeks to achieve in terms of dwelling mix, 2 and 3 bedroom. There is an emphasis in Lichfield on 2-bedroom properties because there's a bit of a dearth, I think, in the district. I haven't got the policy in front of me, but off the top of my head, I think it's about 41 or 42% of major developments should be pushing towards that. I think the development off the top of my head is about 37%. So there is it's almost there, but not quite there. That's really what we're trying to say about broadly aligning with. But mainly it's 2 and 3 bedroom properties that's the dearth. And in the district, and the application is concentrating on those 2 and 3 bedroom properties.
Thank you. It was just the fact that I just wanted clarification on those 2 words because they can be interpreted in many different ways.
Understood. Yeah, it almost nails it on the head, really. But it's almost percentage wise on the money.
Okay. Thank you. Back to Councillor Mears, please.
Thank you very much. I've just got one last question. There's 4 properties that don't have access to their amenity area. Whereabouts on the drawing are they? And can anything be done to give them direct access?
Yes, I can point them out. There is these properties here, and to the north there, these were the previous flatted developments. If the flatted developments were to be delivered, they would have the residents would have no access to amenity space. So what the applicant has done is remove those properties at our request, and is providing units with now private amenity spaces, albeit 4 of those properties you will need to exit through your front door and walk round the side to get to your garden area. It's unorthodox, but unfortunately just the layout of the site you can't deliver it in any other way, unfortunately, without then losing units and then being in discordance with the outline. So the applicant did explore it, but was unable to actually deliver it. I mean, the alternative would be is the flat developments included balconies, but you know, at 5 square meters and high up overlooking the road, it's probably not the most attractive in Lichfield. So this was probably the least worst of all options, really.
Okay, Councillor Marshall, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a very quick comment, really. And that is that with all the work that's gone into the design code and producing what I think will be aesthetically a very, very pleasing street scene in general, I more than welcome the fact that the permitted development rights have been removed. I think that's vitally important, because otherwise what you'd have in sort of 10 years after completion of the estate, it would cease to resemble the images that the architects have chosen to try and create. And so, as I say, I think it's a very important factor that permitted development rights have been, or at least are being recommended to be removed from this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anketel next.
Thank you, Chair. I share Lichfield City Council's concern about the removal of hedgerows, which are important from the amenity point of view and also from the biodiversity point of view. Is it necessary to remove the hedgerows? Can they not be kept?
My understanding is that the hedgerows part of the hedgerows will need to be removed anyway to allow for access. The other part of the hedgerows, the residual part, will be removed and then reinstated as part of the development. And in reality, the rest of the development is offering a significant improvement in biodiversity and landscaping. So it's a loss, but it's unavoidable loss, I'm afraid. But it is compensated thoroughly by the applicant.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Powell next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I don't think anybody's actually moved acceptance, so I'll move acceptance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody's rushing to second. I saw Councillor Marshall to second, so I'll take his seconding. But I just had Councillor Cross down to say something.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to propose that we accept this as well in accordance with the officer's recommendations. But there's one thing that I like the site personally. I think everything's been well planned there. So congratulations to the developer and the planning officers. There's just one issue which concerns me, and that's from experience. In Fradley, we've got 2 junior playing pitches there, and that was planned for 25 parking spaces. We've found that we need 50. And that will be extended by having, like, I forget what you call it now, that Councillor Mears suggested, the corrugated hexagonal, that's it, that's the word I was trying to think of. So 25 is just absolutely no good at all with the juniors, and they don't tend to come in. We've found they don't tend to come along and loaded up in a car. They come along 1 and 2s with mums and dads, so it does create quite a lot of car parking around. So I would recommend that the developer and the plan officers look at that at this stage now.
Okay, so
Thank you.
thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I've just got an amendment that we could maybe agree on, that we ask for a review of parking provision and parking surface to be delegated to the director of planning and regeneration, which is Artemis Ansell. Yeah.
If I just come in on that.
Yeah.
So that will effectively, we'll have a look at that and make sure that there is space to adapt that in future if required, and we'll check that before we issue the decision.
That's fine. Thank you.
That's all right. Okay, so we've got Councillor Powell proposed and Councillor Marshall seconded. Okay, so move to the vote now. If you would like to raise your hands if you agree, if you recommend this for approval. Okay, yep, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we now have something to discuss at the exclusion of public and press. So it is resolved that as publicity will be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business, which would involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. Thank you very